Hello, fiendlings, how the hell are you? We are nearing the end of the Black 2nd Edition podcast. Have you had fun? Are you looking forward to an ending that will probably make you curse me? Good. I know a lot of y'all were hoping that the Outbreak audiobook and trade paperback would be out by now, not to mention Evolution, but there have been some production snags that everyone is currently dealing with. More information on that when I have it. July has been a rough month on the personal health front, and working crazy hours hasn't helped with that. You'll be happy to know I plan on resting this weekend by only doing the work I have to do for you, the Dead Robot Society podcast, which is live every Saturday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube, and the book I need to get back to writing. Seems like there are always things to do, and I keep forgetting half of them. Wish I could teach Shadow to be my personal assistant. Then again, I know the little bastard would have my calendar filled with entries like belly rub time, chase dog time, dog chase shadow time, and everyone's favorite, zoomies. That particular condition usually results in things flying off my desk and hitting the floor in an ignominious heap. Fortunately, my keyboard and coffee cup haven't been casualties, but I fear it's only a matter of time. Luckily, Violet doesn't try and leap up on the desk to play with him. Yet. Well, now that I bored the shit out of you with the details of my last couple of weeks, how about some story? Be safe, have a great week, and we'll talk again real soon. Here's episode 20 of The Black.
The staircase leading down to the deck was in the other direction, and the fire was blocking their way. That meant there was only one way back down, the elevator. Terry panted as he stabbed the down arrow on the metal shell. The sound of cables and machinery vibrated the metal doors. "We don't want to use the fucking elevator," Catfish said. "Wasn't that the whole goddamn point of coming up those stairs?" Aaron's lips turned into a snarl. "Got a better idea, asshole? There are 2 stairwells, and we can't get to either." He jerked a thumb in the direction they'd come. "Unless you want to face off with that thing." Catfish shook his head. "If we get trapped, there's nowhere to go." "It's solid steel," Terry said. "Even if it was in the shaft, it can't get in." "Man," Catfish said, "I don't think you get it. If that thing isn't airtight, it can come through the vents. Through the top. Shit, it could squeeze through the electronics." The elevator dinged. The 4 men pointed their lights at the door as it slid open. "Kill the generator," Calhoun said. "Damn it," Catfish said and turned it off. The generator dying with a wheeze. The air in the hall had grown foul. Between the diesel exhaust and the fumes from the fire in the other hallway, the superstructure was becoming uninhabitable, at least for humans. Calhoun opened up the duffel bag and handed 2 of the heavy flashlights to Terry and Aaron. "Use these," he said. "Let's move." Catfish pushed the generator inside the elevator. The roughnecks put their work lamps on the floor next to it and stepped aside. Calhoun flashed his light down the way they'd come. His eyes widened, and he stepped into the elevator. "Punch it!" Terry hit the button for floor 1. The doors started to close. When there was still a sliver of an opening, Catfish saw something moving in the hallway. "Fuck me. Was it following us?" Calhoun nodded. The elevator started its descent. The generator creaked with the change in gravity. The car's lights still functioned at least, and the men's halogens cast bright circles on the metal walls. No one spoke. The only sound were the machinery above them and their own heavy breathing. The car smelled of unwashed bodies and diesel fumes. "You guys need a shower," Catfish said. Terry chuckled. "So do you." The elevator stopped with a slight bump. The 4 men pointed their flashlights at the door as it slowly creaked open into a lit hallway. Terry stepped forward, his light pointing to the right side. Aaron followed suit to the left. Calhoun and Catfish aimed their lights at the far wall. "Clear," Terry said. Aaron nodded. "It's clear." "How come the lights are still on?" Catfish asked. Calhoun grunted. "I guess those things haven't gotten around to destroying the first floor." "Thank God," Aaron said. "Let's get the hell out of here before that changes." Catfish pushed the hand truck out of the elevator and then pulled the starter cord. The generator sputtered to life, and the large halogen lamps lit up with glaring light. Terry and Aaron pocketed their flashlights and groaned as they picked up the heavy lamps. "Here we go again," Catfish said. Terry took point, Aaron in the back. Calhoun and Catfish once again shared duties on pushing the hand truck while their flashlights bore into the vents near the ceiling. As they made their way down the corridor, Catfish noticed the floor. It had grime and boot prints on it. "Wow, those things really haven't made it down here yet." "Either that," Calhoun said, "or they're in the walls." Catfish shivered at the thought. The image of one of those things bursting through the sheetrock with its tentacles was enough to make him quicken his pace. "Slow down, damn it," Terry said as the hand truck bumped him in the ass. "I'm going as fast as I can here." "Sorry," Catfish said. Calhoun glanced at him, eyebrows raised. "Just want to get out of..." The maze of metal pipes above them groaned. Behind them, something smashed in the hallway. "The hell?" Aaron asked. "Oh shit, get moving!" Terry set the pace, and soon they were jogging down the corridor. Catfish wanted to turn and look at what Aaron had seen, but he was afraid it would make him freeze up. "Goddamn thing has legs!" Aaron screamed. The hallway filled with the sound of sizzling. Suddenly, his fatigue disappeared. Catfish's blood filled with adrenaline, and all he could hear was the thumping of his own heart. Behind him, he could hear Aaron yelling, but it was distant and incomprehensible. Calhoun was chuffing away. The engineer was having trouble keeping pace. Terry turned a corner in the hallway to reach the exit. The line connecting the halogen lamp jerked hard and flew out of the electrical outlet on the generator. Terry's shriek made his blood run cold. "Stop!" Calhoun yelled and let go of the hand truck. The sizzling sound louder. Catfish turned. Aaron hadn't been kidding about legs. A squat thing lumbered toward them. The triped creature's limbs ended in sharp talons, and two tentacles spread from its bulk, reaching toward them like arms. An eye stalk rose from its center and swung in time with its steps. The creature was so black, it was almost impossible to make out any other details. Catfish froze. Calhoun shouted something. Aaron's lamp was pointed straight at the thing. Its black shell smoked from the light, but it kept coming. Calhoun pointed his flashlight at the eye stalk. The thing twitched and shuffled sideways, the long stalk swerving to try and avoid the light. Catfish found his wits and pointed his light at the thing. Between he and Calhoun, they had the eye stalk trapped in overlapping circles of white. A gout of flame shot from the stalk, and then the creature's legs were running the opposite direction. The three lights bore into its back until it was out of range. The thing shuffled around the far corner and was gone. Calhoun turned around and yelled in surprise. Catfish turned as well. A large puddle of black approached them from around the corridor. Calhoun and Catfish pointed their lights at the edges of the thing. It immediately began bubbling and flowed back around the corner and out of sight. "Jesus," Aaron said. "Terry dead?" "If he ain't," Catfish said, "it'll be a fucking miracle." Calhoun exhaled and inhaled in deep breaths. His face was far too red, far too spent. "You okay?" "Not really," Calhoun said. "Okay, Aaron, you keep covering our asses with the lamp. Catfish and I take the corner and let you know if it's clear." "Fuck," Aaron said. "How the hell can it be clear?" "Just do it," Calhoun said. Catfish gulped. He knew what Calhoun had in mind. It was going to suck balls, too. He tightened his grip on the flashlight. "You ready?" Calhoun didn't reply. He moved around the generator and stood against the wall. Catfish kept his light pointed low at the corner and slowly moved around the generator. Calhoun's light shined on a spot less than a quarter meter away in the hall. If the black decided to come flowing in, it would meet the halogen weapon. Catfish took a deep breath before moving forward. As he crept into the hallway, he pointed his light directly ahead. The hallway buzzed with flickering fluorescent overhead lights. He didn't see any sign of the black. What he did see was a belt buckle and several metal buttons. He was about to give the all clear when something shifted at the end of the hall. Something was on the floor back there. It looked like a black block had been placed on the white tiled floor. The door to the deck was in the middle of the hallway, halfway between he and it. "I don't know how fast those things can move," Catfish said without turning around. "But it's at the end of the hallway, over by the decon room." Calhoun sighed. "You checked the ceiling?" "Yeah, nothing there," Catfish said. "But I see Terry's belt buckle." Aaron groaned from the hall. "Can you push the generator, boss?" Calhoun paused. Yes, I could push it past the corner. Catfish gritted his teeth. You don't sound good. Shut up, I'm coming. The generator's motor filled the hallway with sound as Calhoun pushed it forward. Catfish walked a few steps closer to the door, eyes firmly fixed on the shape at the end of the hall. If Aaron managed to get close to it, he could torch it with his much stronger light. But if they got through the doorway unharmed, Catfish wouldn't bother the creature. We still good? Calhoun asked. Yeah, I'm walking. Catfish took one slow step after the other as he headed for the deck hatch. Calhoun's flashlight flicked up toward the vents and then to the ceiling in a constant swing of motion. However bad off the old man was, he was keeping to the plan. The thing at the end of the hall shifted. It had looked like a solid block, but now it was morphing, changing. Something stuck up out of its melting rectangular form. Move! Catfish yelled. He ran toward the door, his flashlight bobbing up and down as he tried to keep it focused on the shape, Calhoun huffing and puffing behind him. A pair of tentacles plopped out of the melted thing and it began dragging itself toward them. Catfish reached the hatch and spun the wheel. The door popped open into a stiff breeze and falling rain. He ran through it and turned. Calhoun struggled to get the generator over the lip. Fuck that thing! Move! He yelled at the older man. Calhoun dropped the hand truck handle and shuffled past it and into the open. Aaron appeared in the doorway and tried to jump the cart. His foot landed awkwardly atop the generator and he slipped, his body tumbling over and hitting the deck with a splat. A black tentacle rushed out of the doorway and smacked into the hand truck. It jostled but didn't move. Catfish ran to Aaron and pulled him away from the door. The tentacle kept waving until a bright light settled on its base. Sizzling and smoking, the thing pulled itself back behind the door. Catfish rushed forward and slammed the hatch close. He cycled the wheel until he was sure it was sealed. God damn it, he said. Calhoun was barely standing. The older man was spent. Go find Shauna and sit down, Catfish said to him. He broke his stare with Calhoun and returned his gaze to Aaron. Get someone to help me with this guy. The engineer nodded and slowly backed away from him. Calhoun finally turned and walked toward the drill table. Catfish sighed and rolled Aaron over. He wished he hadn't. Aaron's head was caved in on the left side. One of his eyes was open, but the pupil was so small it might as well be non-existent. He held the man's wrist and searched for a pulse. Nothing. They'd lost the entire team except for he and Calhoun. The light and the generator were both behind that hatch. They wouldn't be able to get either of them back out unless they were willing to let that thing loose. He hoped they had plenty more lights. The sky was getting darker, not lighter. It was only 9 a.m. and she felt like the day had lasted a year. She sat on a tool chest some 6 meters away from the roughnecks working on the drill string. Bill and Vrabel sat near her. The three of them had sucked down bottled water, but there was no food on the deck. Her stomach rumbled. She was nauseous and on the verge of passing out. She raised her eyes to the bridge. Black smoke billowed out of the windows. She wondered how long it would be before the fire destroyed the superstructure. And when that happened, where would they go? Vrabel had told her the fire systems must have been damaged by the creatures. When they shorted out the lights in the hallways, they no doubt damaged the sprinklers as well. With any luck, he'd said, the lower and upper floors still work and maybe we'll only lose the bridge level. Only, she thought. She knew what Vrabel wasn't saying. Without the bridge, there was no radio. Without the bridge, there were no thrusters, no control over the helm. The only controls they had access to were those on the deck. And besides the emergency ballast instruments, they didn't have fuck all else. She wondered what the creature that had once been Steve Gomez was doing. Was it trapped on the bridge, too terrified to come out into the dim sunlight? Or had it already found a way to escape down the burning vents? Or maybe, just maybe, the fire was already spreading into the bridge and would kill it. Gomez, Creeley, Green, they were gone. The team had gone into the rig to save Gomez. They'd failed, and 2 men had died in the process. Shauna felt like crying, but she was too damn tired. Too damn frustrated. At least they knew for sure what happened when the black encountered fire. As Calhoun had postulated, the liquid was extremely flammable. Sunlight, a swath of the UV spectrum, and fire were the only weapons they could use against it. Sunlight was cheap and safe, but it only lasted so many hours. In this storm, there was no guarantee the black wouldn't risk joining them on the deck. The UV spectrum delivered by the halogens certainly damaged it, but again, she wasn't certain how long the flashlights and lamps would deter it. Fire was easy to create and deploy, but they were sitting on a goddamn powder keg. One look at the superstructure was enough to know that. The men working the drill string hadn't asked questions. They'd seen the cuts, Vrabel's 1,000-yard stare, and thought better of saying much of anything. The fact Creeley, Green, and Gomez hadn't returned with them was more than enough proof they'd failed. Shauna studied the men's body language as they prepared the wire lines. They were exhausted and defeated. If Calhoun's team didn't come through with a miracle, they were all going to die here. She shook the water from her hair and then gave Bill an apologetic smile. He grinned and wiped a sheen of rain from his thick, black beard. "We have any umbrellas out here?" she asked. Bill grunted. "No, ma'am. There are some emergency slickers inside, but," he said, and popped his back with a groan of satisfaction. "I don't think you want to go in there." No, not really." Vrabel glanced at her. The man hadn't said more than 3 words since they'd leapt for their lives. Like Bill had said, she'd had to jump first. The steep stairs met the platform more than 4 meters above her. She'd stared at the wet metal stairs and aimed for the bottom railing. It was only a meter or 2 away from the ledge, but had seemed like miles away. After a deep breath, she'd pistoned her legs with a shriek. As her body had neared the railing, she knew she was too low. She'd thrown her arms out and snapped them shut over the railing. Pain rocked up her arms and back. She felt something give in her shoulder, ignored it, and swung by her hands over the deck. Shauna flung her leg up and caught the edge of the railing. As carefully as she could, she pulled herself up onto the stairs. She lay there, the steps biting into her back, and panted. "You okay?" Bill yelled from the ledge. She popped her head around the rail and nodded. "Okay, Vrabel's coming next." Shauna forced herself to stand and walked a few steps down. She crouched and waited. If Vrabel couldn't hold on to the railing, she might be able to pull him up. Her arms shrieked at the thought. Of course, if he missed the railing, there wasn't a damned thing she could do. She watched as the rig chief gathered himself. He took a deep breath and swung his arms back and forth. Then he leaped. Unlike Shauna, he went too high instead of too low. His chest hit the lower rail. His hands missed the upper rail, and then he started to fall backwards, his left arm wrapped around the lower metal bar and taking all his weight. Vrabel screamed. Shauna reached down and took his other hand. She lifted as hard as she could and felt something give in her back. The 2 of them yelled in pain as she helped him over the railing and onto the steps. They lay panting as rain pattered down upon their heads. "That was too close," Vrabel said. "No shit," Shauna grinned. "Y'all okay?" Bill asked from the ledge. "No," Vrabel yelled back, "but we're alive." "Let me know when you're ready," Bill said. Meters above them, a wall of black smoke funneled through the doorway. Shauna wrinkled her nose. "We need to get moving." Vrabel nodded. "Yeah, okay." He used the rail to push himself upright. He offered Shauna a hand and helped her stand. The wide stairs gave them enough room to stand side by side and watch as Bill made the crossing. His jump was perfect. The metal groaned under the big man's weight as his hands wrapped around the railing. Bill pulled himself up onto the stairs. Red-faced and panting a little, he grinned at them. "No sweat." Something crashed above them. Shauna turned to look at the doorway. A flame leaped out and then disappeared. "Fuck this. Let's go. Now." The 3 of them had ran down the steps as fast as they could. When they had hit the deck, the rain began coming down harder. Forks of lightning had flashed in the sky, followed by booming thunder. For a moment, the sound of grinding machinery and engines had been lost in the din. Now Shauna stared out into the ocean and watched as the waves seemed to grow larger before her eyes. Her arms were bruised and cut from where she'd slammed into the grated stairs. She rubbed a hand against her shoulder. "How long before we—" She stopped in mid-sentence as a figure appeared out of the shadows next to the superstructure. She smiled, stood, and quickly walked to Calhoun, who carried a flashlight and 3 PPE duffel bags. The closer she came to him, the more worried she became. His skin didn't look good and he was gasping for breath. "Give me the duffels," she said. He waved her away and kept walking toward Bill and Vrabel. The two men looked up at him as he unwound the bags from his shoulders and laid them on the deck. He unzipped one and pulled out a cardboard box. "I come bearing food," he said. He split open the box, took one of the bars and handed the rest to Vrabel. Shauna stared at the open duffel. Batteries, flashlights, and food? She grinned. "Looks like you had a successful scavenger hunt." Calhoun shook his head. He more collapsed on the bench than sat down. "Bill, Catfish needs some help with Aaron. I think—" "Forget it," Catfish said from behind her. Shauna turned and watched as Catfish wrung out his soaked hair. A stream of water hit the deck. He stared up into the sky for a second and let the rain wash down upon his face. "Where's Aaron?" Vrabel asked. Catfish shook his head. "Didn't make it. Slipped and hit the deck head first." "Jesus," Bill said. His giant fists clenched and unclenched. "You guys get chased?" Catfish and Calhoun exchanged a glance. "You could say that," the old man said. "I'm gonna sit here and eat this energy bar and rest." "Yeah," Shauna said. "You do that." She looked at Catfish. "Get what you need?" "Besides a new pair of pants? Yeah." He looked around and sighed. "Gomez didn't make it either?" "No, he didn't," Vrabel said. "Neither did Creeley or Green." Catfish sucked his cheeks hollow. "We have enough deckhands to do what needs to be done?" Vrabel shrugged. "I guess, if we all help. Since we're not exactly worried about tight seals, I think we can manage." "Okay, good," Catfish said. He dropped his duffel bag to the floor and pocketed the flashlight. "I'm gonna eat something. We should probably call those guys over too. Ain't much, but it'll have to do." Lightning crisscrossed the sky and the rig lit up in the twilight. Thunder shook the world 2 seconds later. "Storm's getting closer." "Yeah," Catfish said as he tore open one of the energy bar wrappers. "I think we've been in it for days."